All right, I'm with Ed Beasters here today, and we're just going to talk a little bit about climbing boots and mountaineering boots, and dial down on the leather versus plastic pros and cons. What are you climbing in these days, Ed?
Well, right now I'm climbing in the La Sportiva Evo for summer mountaineering, guiding on Mount Rainier. I used to be always wearing the Koflock boots, but this is such a great alternative. It's lighter weight, it's much more breathable. I think it's a little bit more flexible, a little bit more comfortable. So for a general alpine mountaineering boot, this is now what I'm using.
I'm the same way. This Evo is really my Rainier boot. It's awesome. It's probably, it's a little bit cooler, a little bit colder in early season, late season, but for the bulk of the Rainier season, June, July, August, this thing's great. I do know that with a single leather boot, fit is maybe, you have to pay attention to it. I know on the plastic boot, and I was plastic for years and years and years, while this boot is a little maybe heavier and bulkier, it is a little more friendly on the fit.
It's a little wider. It's definitely, this is more of a German European fit. This is more of a French, narrower foot, lower volume. And the benefit of a plastic boot with the liner, it's maybe a little bit more forgiving as well. There's more padding around the foot, at the bottom of the foot, so it's probably going to be a little bit more comfortable. But this will give you more delicate climbing feeling. If you're doing something a little bit more technical, this will give you a better feel with your foot as far as what you're doing on the rock or on the ice.
Yeah, agreed. This is a smaller boot. You have a pretty big size. What's this, a 12 or
That's
something?
That's a 13.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, but if you just look at the profile of these two, you can see, I mean, obviously this is a smaller boot, but it's much narrower, more lightweight, and you're going to, as you say, feel the terrain a little bit better with your feet. I think, back over on the plastic, one of the benefits of a inner boot, you can see what happens here is oftentimes when you get friction, it's between the outside of the inner boot and the shell, versus with a single boot, if you're getting friction, your foot's going up and down, it's actually on your foot,
right,
against the single leather boot. So that's a benefit, and once again, kind of point to how the Koflock and double plastic boot works well, particularly in a rental situation. I know up on Rainier, we rent an awful lot of boots, and these days we're renting both leather boots and plastics. And I think for fitting a lot of different feet that obviously come in different sizes, that plastic boot is pretty friendly initially for a first-time user.
And I always tell people as well, before you commit to buying and investing in a boot, if you have the opportunity to rent the boots, that's a really good option. Does this fit better or does this fit better? I mean, this is where the rubber hits the road, and your feet are what takes you into the mountains, and that's what helps you to climb. And if the boot doesn't work, if the sock combo that you have doesn't work, you're never going to get up the mountain. So the feeling of the boot is the most critical part.
Absolutely, and yeah, feet come in all sizes, so there's a lot of different manufacturers out there. Let's go to and maybe talk a little bit about the Olympus Mons. This is La Sportiva's boot. I wore these to the summit of Everest, and just a few weeks ago to the top of Mount Vinson, where it was 70 below or something, super cold. I love this boot, and basically it's a double boot with a lot of insulation and an over boot that is integrated, and it's really a part of the boot. It's one whole unit. This thing is super warm. It's fairly heavy. It'd be interesting to see with the Koflock and double plastic boot. Now, when you climbed Everest in these, and what were you wearing down in Antarctica?
I had these in Antarctica, and then to insulate on top of that, I have an overboot, a neoprene overboot, which basically is what this is built onto. I've used these for years on all my 8,000 meter peaks. I was always afraid to switch to something else, so this worked for me, so I stayed with it. And obviously lower on these 8,000 meter peaks, I don't have to wear an overboot, But as I get higher and as it gets colder, then I add another layer, which is my insulated neoprene overboot, and then the crampons on top of that. And it would be interesting to see in the end which is actually heavier or lighter, and I would guess this is going to be a little lighter.
So do you think double plastic boots are going to go away, or is there still a place for them?
Well, as far as I know, they brought these back. Koflach has a new refined version of this. Obviously, they think it's going to sell. It's popular enough. It's kind of the a la carte boot. You can add and subtract, whereas that is kind of probably going to be overkill for a lot of people for what they're doing. And this maybe gives you a little bit more versatility.
Probably want to look at more of an approach boot. If you're going to go with something like this for up high. Not on a trip like McKinley, you pretty much fly onto the glacier and the ice, and even Antarctica you fly onto the ice, and this worked just fine. But on an Everest trip for sure, or any mountain that you're going to have an approach, you're probably going to want to go with another boot besides this one.
Right, yeah, you can't hike into a mountain wearing these. You're going to kill yourself. So you wear a lighter weight trekking boot until you get to base camp, and then from there you shift into the more rigid and warmer climbing boot.
All right, well, Ed, thanks for chatting it up here a little bit. Yep. And as you can see, there's a lot of different options when it comes to mountaineering boots. If you have more questions, contact the staff at Whitaker Mountaineering. Those guys run up and down Rainier all the time in boots just like these, and they can answer your questions.